Coaching Soccer Weekly, episode 360. Chelsea Visit, Part 1. Entertaining, educational, and inspiring soccer content to help make you a more effective coach, player, or soccer parent. Hello, and welcome back to Coaching Soccer Weekly, presented by World Class Coaching. My name is Sega Verbinovich, and this is the podcast devoted to bringing you cutting-edge methods, techniques, and tactics for coaching soccer. It doesn't matter if you're an experienced coach who has been training teams for many years, or if you're new to coaching and working with a team for the very first time. There's something we can all do to take our coaching to the next level. Welcome back to the show. It seems like forever ago. It's been less than a week, but it really seems like a very long time since I did the show. As most of you know, I had my trip to Chelsea, and I'll talk about that today. I do want to start this off with a disclaimer, because I think a lot of people are going to be expecting something that I'm just not going to be talking about. I'll start off this way. Chelsea is very different than my academy. At under 8, they already have the best players in the region. We don't have that luxury. And they have the best players in the region at every age group. And that was very evident to see when I watched them play. So how they coach their players, the coaching sessions, all that stuff is really not applicable to what I do. And I've talked about this in the past, the fact that a lot of coaches will just go on YouTube, search up Pep Guardiola, training sessions, see what they're doing, and then bring that to their U9 sessions. And that makes no sense at all. These are players that are training in a very intense atmosphere, and they're essentially professionals at a young age, which is really not the way that most coaches, most youth coaches have. We don't have that type of environment. So if you're expecting me to talk about the coaching sessions, that's just not what this trip was about. And I knew that going in. It was really about the operations, how Chelsea runs their programs, how they treat their players, how the staff interact with players and in different types of environments, what the facilities look like. It was just really everything except the coaching part. Don't get me wrong, we had some sessions about coaching and all that, but those were very specific. The coach mentioned, his formation was because he actually had, I think it was 9 defenders on his team. So in his situation, when they were playing 11v11, which we aren't playing, and he had 9 defenders, that was the formation he chose so that he can maximize the players that he had to be on the field. So if you're expecting that, that's just not going to happen. So I'm sorry, but that's how that was really the point of the trip, at least for me. So I'll be talking a lot about that operations point of view, and it will be really interesting. So that's part 1. That's disclaimer number 1. Number 2, I'm going to break this up into different episodes because that's really what it was. It was different experiences on different days. This show today is going to be about getting to Chelsea, and I think I'll also talk about day 1. There were really 3 different days. That really felt like one day for me. Getting there, being there for the first day with 3 hours of sleep, and then the next day, which was a lot of presentations and watching training sessions, going in, touring, that type of thing. And then the third day, which was games, essentially. So that's really how I'm going to divide it up. So I'll probably do one part today, and then next week I'll do maybe part 2, talking about kind of the rest. Now, I will be talking about some soccer stuff and some stuff that isn't related to soccer. But yeah, hopefully you enjoy the show. So let's get into it. I want to start by telling you a story. One of the things that always lights a fire in me is when I hear the word no. And I've heard that a lot. And whenever I hear that, something in my brain, and I don't know why, I honestly don't, it just is, kind of goes, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you for saying no. I got to show this person that they made a huge mistake. And that's how I start this story of how I got to Chelsea. I made a connection at Liverpool, and I wanted to partner up with a professional club, and that was because I want to give my players the opportunity to play at the highest level and to be at least looked at by those coaches and put them in those environments. So I went out looking for a partnership with Liverpool and just to kind of see how that would work. And essentially, the feedback that I got was, no, you're too small. And that just didn't sit right with me, and that lit a fire in me. And it was, you're too small from a player point of view, so you don't have enough players. Financially, you're too small. And it just really aggravated me because just because you're a small club doesn't mean you can't produce great talent. And it doesn't mean you can't be helpful. So that's how I got to Chelsea. I got a no from Liverpool, and then I worked my butt off to make sure that eventually they're going to regret the fact that they said no to me. And that's just a theme that I've had in my life forever. I remember getting fired from a job and basically saying I never ever want to have a boss again. And that's why I started the academy, and that's why it's been so successful. And I still honestly, framed is my letter of them firing me. Like, that's, I have that, and I look at that, and every day, not every day, but a lot of the time I go past it and I go, I'm still going to show you. And yeah, I just so that's essentially what led me to get to Chelsea. Now, I worked my butt off getting those connections at Chelsea, and those connections led to other connections within Chelsea, and that's how I ended up there. So I know a lot of people asked, how did you end up at Chelsea? That's it, and it's through hard work. That's the secret. If you want to know the secret of how to get these types of connections, you got to work for it. You can't just, you got to find someone who will lead you to someone else. And it's very easy to do that, I think, if you put in the effort. Go on a team's website, email someone. Again, the worst thing is a no. And no's aren't bad. No, for me, is just try something different. Try a different approach. That's what that means. So yeah, made that connection. Got the email, and yeah, then I went to Chelsea. Now, I'm going to talk about something that has nothing to do with soccer, but is really important and has had, again, a huge impact on my life. And this, sorry, but this episode today, it's not a lot about soccer, but there will be some soccer stuff in the end. But this is really important of physically how I got to Chelsea. I think there are two types of people. There are those people who money isn't an obstacle in travel, and then there are people that money is an obstacle, and I'm that. Money is an obstacle. So I needed a way to be able to travel to these destinations, Chelsea and other places that I really want to go as well, and not have to worry about breaking the bank. And if you watched my Instagram stories, you actually saw that I went first class. And the reason I was able to do that was because of points. And I want to talk about that because hopefully it will help someone. It will help someone, maybe take a family vacation, maybe do exactly what we did. which is go to Chelsea or whatever. I just want to help you with that very quickly. I'm going to give you a name of a YouTube channel called The Prince of Travel. Now, I'm not selling you anything at all. If this is a route you want to take, and I really think everyone should follow him and really see how to use points in the way that he approaches it. He's very knowledgeable to the point where I actually did a presentation for my family, and now our goal is to kind of all travel together, first class for the first time ever. But I think it's really important. I'm no expert in it, but if this is something that you've been struggling with, traveling, he is absolutely amazing. So it's called Prince of Travel. It's also a Facebook group, really great. But please check that out. It really has changed my life from the point of view that now I know I can travel for free. That's pretty much it. Yeah. So hopefully that helps at least one person out there. Hopefully more. But yeah. Now I do just want to add one more thing, because the thing that has been really life changing for me was sitting in premium economy and first class, because it's the only opportunity that I can think of that you're going to be sitting next to a stranger and they can't leave. They can't. They're stuck next to you. And the people that I've sat next to, I've made a point of talking to, and they've been some really amazing from the point of business and where they are and how they got there. So I just had a conversation with a CEO of a really big company, and he helped me with my business. So if you do find yourself in that first class environment or even premium economy, talk to the person next to you. Worst thing that they can do is fake going to sleep. That's it. They'll fake going to sleep. That's it. That's the worst thing. People are just nice. So, really amazing experience on the way back. Just sitting next to one of the nicest people. Yeah, who's just, yeah. Anyway, so let's talk about the soccer part. I arrived in London with the time change and flight and all that, ends up being about 12 hours. And I only got 3 hours of sleep. So the first day I'm going in, and I'm so jet lagged, so tired. And that's why it kind of all felt like one day. I left at 6:15 p.m. Canada time, Toronto time, Eastern time. And then I landed in London, which was only a 7-hour flight, but I landed at 6 in the morning. From there, we waited at the airport, picked up some other people who were also part of the trip. And then as soon as we got in the car, I fell asleep. So I would estimate that I was out about, on the first day, 4 hours of sleep. I usually get my 7, so I was very sleep deprived. But I woke up from essentially going on a speed bump. That's what woke me up into the training ground. And I'm going to try and paint a picture for you. If you did follow me on Instagram, then you got to see what it looked like. I did take a lot of pictures and videos. I didn't want to break any of the rules that they had, so I didn't film any of the players or anything that I wasn't allowed to. But I was able to film the training ground. And it was absolutely beautiful. It was what I would call soccer heaven, if that existed. And I'm going to try and paint this picture for you. So you arrive in a security gate, kind of like a narrow road, and obviously the facility itself and the property is blocked by tall bushes, so you can't see across from it. As you enter on the left side, there is a pretty big mansion, which was the former owner's place of residence when he decided to come to the training ground. So you arrive and you kind of see that That's the first thing that you see. Then you drive a little bit further, and there's a security gate. So a security guard, gate, and you go in. Immediately to your left is an indoor facility. So it's just a field there. They also have their strength equipment, and that's primarily where the younger kids train. On the right side is the first team training ground. So the first team facility is there and the first team training ground, and that's something that we were not allowed in. So we didn't have any interaction with the first team. Then you keep driving, and on the left side is the boardrooms where the academy players eat. It's really their infrastructure from a management point of view. So that's where players would go in to have a meeting about their games, right? So to show video, stuff like that. A lot of the coaches, the academy coaches, have their offices there. A lot of other people as well that sit within the Chelsea Academy setup are also there. After that is just soccer fields. I don't know if it was because I was so sleep deprived, but I just kept being in awe of the quality of the grass. And I know that is so weird, so weird. But when I walked on these fields, when I saw them, the grass was cut absolutely perfectly on every single training ground. There were about, I don't know, 8, I would say. No, less than that. 1, 2. There were about, I think, 4 training grounds. And that's kind of small stadiums, not training grounds. There were small stadiums where the academy teams would play. So later on, we watched the U18s. They played there. The U16s played on a different field as well. So I think there were about 3 to 4 fields where the older teams would play. There was also a rehab training ground as well, which was smaller. They had a really small kind of street-style soccer field with turf. That was the only turf that was there. Everything else was grass. So that was kind of the first part. So you go in, left side, indoor facility. Right after that is, indoor soccer facility. Then after that is like the offices, and then after that is the stadiums. Now, those are broken up by a giant pond, and after that is where the younger teams would train. And there's an insane amount of fields after that. And I don't know how many fields there are. I didn't count, but there was a lot of fields. And that's where like the U12s, 13s, 14s, 15s, 16s, that's where they all train. Now after that is where we were most of the time. So on the right side is where the women train, and that's all women. The first team, the U18s, the U16s, 14s, and 12s. They all train together, from my understanding. I don't know if the U12s do. I know the 14s, 18s, and 16s in the first team. They all kind of have their own smaller facility and building. So that's where they train. The first team has their own field, and then beyond that is where the U18s and the U16s train. We got to watch a U18 session I'll talk about later on. And then beside the women's building, there's a small building, a small structure, and that's where we were. There were 6 of us, and that's where we had our meetings and our presentations, and that's where we were for most of the time. Now, other than the amazing grass fields, which stood out, the other 2 things that really stood out, and again, I don't know if I was just so tired, but the coaches, their uniform was so slick and so nice, and I don't know, I'm guessing I was just tired, but anyway, that's another thing that stood out. And the last thing that stood out all weekend long was just how nice and approachable people were. As I've mentioned a bunch of times, In group situations, I'm a very introverted person unless there is soccer. When soccer is a part of it, I am so unbelievably extroverted and I will talk to anyone. And that's also on the street, by the way. If I see a parent while I'm in a grocery store with a I'll talk to the parent and I'll be like, hey, I have a soccer academy. I'll do that. Now, if I'm at a club, I will not talk to anyone or a bar. I will just not. That's not, I don't know. So when we were later on in the academy building having lunch, which is one of the first things that we did, I spoke to a lot of different coaches, tried to, just understand a little bit more. And everyone was so nice and approachable and kind. And I love that. And that really stood out for me. So for me as a business owner, what I got from that was Chelsea's a really good place to work. You can say what you want about the club, the first team, whatever, but people aren't just kind. That's not in a work environment unless there's a reason behind that. People, you know, can be really stressed, angry. I got none of that. Everyone was so nice. Everyone was so friendly. They were sitting together, talking to each other. So it's a really good place to work from what I saw. Everyone genuinely enjoys being there. And that's really one of the things that really stood out for me. Now, why is that important? Well, if your coaches hate what they're doing and they hate the environment, they're going to be stressed, angry, and they're going to pass that on to the kids. And then the kids are going to be angry. There's going to be bad attitude. And it's just not going to be a pleasant environment because that trickles down. Just like in a regular office business setting, right? If your boss is yelling at you, you're not going to be happy and you're going to start yelling and you're going to start getting anxious. And that's not the environment that you want to foster for kids that are in an already stressful environment, which is what this is for kids, because at any point they could be let go and now they're not on the road to become a professional soccer player anymore. So they have to show up every single day, and it has to be the coaches who have the right attitude for it. So those were the three things that really stood out to me: the grass, the uniforms, and the people. That was a constant theme throughout my weekend at Chelsea. So the first thing that we did was we went into the academy building, right, which I spoke about before, and we went up for lunch. Now, this goes into something really important, which is player care, and we had a whole presentation on that. I'm telling you this because I was able to go to different restaurants in London, well, Fulham, where we stayed. We stayed right next to the stadium. I'll talk about that later on. The best food that I ate through that whole trip was all in the academy. I'm a very healthy eater, and everything that I could possibly dream of was available. And that's really important for, again, the players. Making sure that the food that's available, there wasn't chips, there wasn't fries, there wasn't anything deep fried. It just wasn't, everything was healthy, everything tasted good. And if you're a 12-year-old kid, you're just going to grab whatever's in front of you. That's what's going to happen. So what was in front of them was healthy food, great tasting food, and something that if I was a nutritionist, that's what I would want kids to eat. That's it. And the best meals that I had were there, to the point where I kept bugging, and I'm sorry for that. I kept bugging the person who was running the trip that we should just eat there the whole time. And that's really what I would have loved to just have lunch there every single day. Going to restaurants just wasn't as good. Yeah. So we started with kind of an introduction. They spoke a little bit about how things operate and all that within Chelsea, and then my favorite presentation by far of the whole entire weekend was after that, and it was a player care presentation. Now, the player care presentation was really what I cared about the most going into this weekend. And it's essentially the operations of how they treat players that doesn't pertain to soccer. So you have things like strength, you have things like nutrition, you have things like uh, what happens if a child is sad, and isn't performing well on the field. So it's how do you care for the individual as a whole? Also, if they're staying with a host family, there's all these different parts of it. And Chelsea's actually one of the first ones to have this player care program at such a high level. So it was really interesting, and the woman did a really great job with her presentation, talking about these different aspects. And that's really what I wanted to get out of it. Yeah, but that was a really insightful presentation. Just learned a lot from her and the way that they operate and what it takes to really get the psychological side of things down for players. So that was really cool. After that, they started talking about the U14s. Um, yeah, so there was an insight into how Chelsea Academy works with their U9s, U8s, which was really eye opening. Um, they had they spoke about the fact that their really big recruitment is mostly at U9. So essentially, the way it works is at U8 and U7, they'll find the best players within their programs, which has to have a radius of, I think, 1 hour or 1.5 hours away from Chelsea, from the training ground. So they'll take the best 300 players within all of their programs, put them together, and then they'll scout those 300. And out of them, I forget the exact number. I think it might have been like 14 or 15. They'll pick the best players there, and then those will get a contract at U9. Every 2 years, they'll cut players and bring in new players. So you get a contract essentially for 2 years. Um, yeah. At first, I mean, still, it's tough for me to say that because you have the 300 best kids, and I think you can develop all of them. The one way I would rectify my argument and kind of based on what they said was essentially Monday they would train with Chelsea. Tuesday they would go to another showcase like Spurs. Then they would go to Arsenal. So during the week they'd probably go to 5 different academies. And if you don't make Chelsea, you could still make Spurs and you could still make, Manchester United, whatever, all these other clubs. So out of those 300 that are probably training everywhere, maybe 150, 200 kids would be able to get those contracts, right? Some of them probably take 20 kids, some of them 14. So out of all that, most of them are getting contracts anyway, so I can see that. But I just think if you could grab 30 of them, of the best players that are already the best, and you can develop them, which is what you should be able to do at U9, maybe the 30th best kid could easily become the best. Kids are just different in the way that they develop. So that was the only kind of hard part I had about it. But as a youth coach, that was a tough pill for me to swallow. I just hate cutting kids, so that was hard. But, it's a different world there. And that's also why I don't think the training sessions can be compared. You've got players that could already pass, shoot, dribble at a very high level at U9. So to take a session from a U9 there and bring it to doesn't make any sense. And that was pretty much it. That was the first night. After that, we took our car to the Stamford Bridge, which is where the hotel was, and went to sleep. And that was just the first day. So next week I will talk about, I think, the second day. We'll see how I structure it. We also have games this weekend, which we're really working on Scan, Choose, Do, which was the episode from last week. We're also working on some things that I learned at Chelsea from watching players and seeing the difference in level and kind of what we were missing at different age groups. So I'm doing a lot of that. I'm also making stuff up, if I'm being honest, to the players, and just kind of using Chelsea as a motivational tool to let them know what they need to work on. So, but I think that's okay. For example, just one of our age groups just doesn't pay attention. So, I'm using Chelsea as kind of a motivator and stuff like that. So that's part of it. But there are, I thought, teams that we could compete with as well. I think our 2014s, our A team, can really compete with the U9s that I saw. Now, I didn't get a chance to see the full academy players, but I got to see the players that are being considered for the academy. So I thought that some of our players would be right there at the top. We have some really good 2013s that I thought could also compete as well. But yeah, I'll talk about more of that later on because we did end up seeing some U9s and U12s and all that. So that'll be next week's episode. Thanks for listening to another episode of Coaching Soccer Weekly. Next week, I'll talk about more of my experience at Chelsea. But I think it's really important to find these types of opportunities. Now, it may not be going to a club like Chelsea, but a lot of these clubs have online courses that you can look up. You really just have to figure out what teams you want to play like and if it's really a good fit for you. And then you can do the research, right? You can search Manchester City has online courses. A lot of these places just have this now because of where we are in the world. Online courses are very popular. So if I were you, I'd do some research into that. And that would just be a really good first step in creating a relationship with these clubs. This weekend, I'll be back to games, and I'll talk about that also next week. So until then, enjoy the journey, enjoy the moment, but most importantly, enjoy the game. Coaching Soccer Week is a production of World Class Coaching. All rights reserved.
Hey, thanks for watching all the way to the end. And you can check out more of our videos right here. And if you haven't done so already, I would really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button and the subscribe button.